Good. Hello, everyone. How are you? Good. I'm so glad you came. I wanted you guys to be in a cool place to start off the workshops and make sure that it was covered and you didn't have to worry about anything. But we're about to start. Thank you so much for coming to our camp meeting workshop for communications. Let's get started with a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for allowing us to spend this time together to learn, to just discover more of what you have in store for us, to grow creatively, and to communicate your word in different and various ways. We pray for those who are still on their way, help them arrive safely without hurt, harm, or danger. And we thank you for this opportunity and this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So, I found out that I have received one of the briefest yet succinct bios ever in my life, ever. But this is Mr. Eric Louw, and Pastor Louw is currently completing his PhD in Adventist Studies at Andrews Theological Seminary. He loves technology, learning, and finding new ways to share the rich contributions Adventism provides for understanding the gospel and mission-motivated living. His workshop title is AI for the Church Member. That's it. He says he wants to get straight to the point, and that's what he wants to do. So we're very appreciative. I'm appreciative of him being here. So please enjoy the presentation.
Well, thanks so much for having me. As we'll be looking at this topic, I think it's becoming an ever more important topic in our world today. A little more about myself. I am married to one wife and have a little 3-year-old daughter. And we spent a number of years in Texas Conference, about 6 years there, spent a few years at the seminary, then went back, then came back here again, and as Janine mentioned, I'm now doing my PhD at Andrews. So I have always had an interest in technology. Even while I was pastoring, I served as Vice President of Communications and Marketing and Networking for GYC over the years. I also worked for Pathway to Health as their programming director. So I've always been involved in video and photos and production in some way, shape, or form. And you can imagine that when AI started picking up, I started getting excited again because in many ways it's like the early 2000s where Google had just come out and the world was opening up in a new way. And so, with a lot of that excitement comes a lot of risks. So what I'm going to do today is going to be multifaceted. I'm going to start with an introduction and explain what changed in the world with the bringing in of AI, how things work, and I think it's really important to understand how things work before I show you what you can do with it. Because if you don't know how it works, you'll try to do things that it's not designed for, and you'll say, why isn't this working? So that's the intention here, is to give you a brief overview. That'll be the boring part, because everyone wants to see what it can do, right? But bear with me through that first bit. I'll try to abbreviate that so that we can get into the fun stuff. Let me say one other thing. I came across a statement a little while ago that just really stuck out to me. In times of profound change, the learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. You do not want to be one of those people, do you? Especially if you're planning to be relevant in the near future. So as I would say, don't be left behind. Let's start out with what changed. So around 2007, one of the biggest changes in the technology world came out. It was known as the Apple iPhone. With the release of the iPhone, at first it was a very closed garden. You had like 3 or 4 apps and that was it. I mean, there was no app store originally when Apple released the iPhone. And with the rise of smartphones, competition ramped up. And of course, you soon had Google producing phones, and people say, "What is a Nokia anymore?" Right? You have this changed world, so to speak. But the interesting thing is, soon after, you have social media coming on the rise. Social media already existed in some ways, but combining that with smartphones allowed for a whole new world of tracking. Have you ever wondered why social media is free? Usually, because you're the product. They're tracking you rather than you having a grand time. You have a grand time at the same time, but really what they're doing is they're figuring out your metrics. What are you interested in? What are you going to click on next? Where do your eyes stop as you're scrolling that feed? And they use this information to market to you. My wife and I started a marketing business not too long ago, and as we've really gotten into learning how everything works, it's interesting to see, but when you go into Facebook, you can target ads right down to the specific interests of an individual, and that's where the ads will show up. So gone are the days of just getting relevant junk mail. Now it's relevant everything everywhere, right? Everywhere you look, you'll see things that cater to your interests. Now, that's what happened on the back end of things. People started being tracked. I mean, you can't walk anywhere without your phone telling you how many steps you walked. So there's this element of heightened tracking. And on the one hand, this may sound scary. On the other hand, it's an opportunity. Because what can happen is they can give back to us at the same time. And we benefit from these features, don't we? You can compare your activity with your neighbors and friends. You can do workouts. You can do whatever it is. And you can compare and compete. And it opens a whole new world with implications. So this is where AI technologies began to rise. For the first time in human history, we had before us a huge wealth of data. We can now scrape entire social media networks and find everything everyone's ever said on every different topic, and we can use that to train computers. And we're going to look at that in a bit, but today we see all these different forms of AI. We have text-based AI, we have image AI, we have upscalers to take images and make them larger. This used to be impossible. You make an image bigger, it would still be all blurry. Now you can actually do it so that you can see things much more clearly. You have video AI technologies, voice AI technologies where you can clone your voice with just 15 seconds of your voice as the sample. All they need is 15 seconds and they can completely mimic your voice. Music AI is another, perhaps one of the most fun, and we'll look at that a little bit more. So if you don't think that you use AI, you do. You may not realize it, but if you use autocorrect on your phone, that's AI. It learns your typos and it learns to fix those typos for you. Sometimes if it learns wrong, it keeps saying a bad word when you're trying to say the right word, right? And that can be frustrating. But so much more than that, if you have a smart home assistant, that's a very limited set of AI right now. It'll get better over time. If you use Google Maps or Apple Maps or any kind of mapping technology, Lyft and Uber, these all use AI. If you look at the tracking, the traffic when you're traveling from point A to point B on your map, it even guesses how much traffic is typically here based on an average from the past month or two. And so AI is constantly working, and it's really called machine learning. The machine looks at what's been done over time, and it calculates predictions. That's what it does. So there are all these different ways. I mean, even your bank uses AI to know if a weird transaction is coming through. So we use AI all the time without realizing it. Well, what happened with generative AI is they did something a little different. They said, okay, we're going to try something a little more dynamic. And so what they did was they said, okay, how can we use this machine learning in a more predictive way that will not just take data it already knows from the past month, but as much data as we can throw at it. And so they created something called a neural network. It is what it sounds like. It's like in your brain you have neurons, right? And they're all interconnected, and those neurons store information, and information networks together, and that's how we learn as children growing up into adults. Well, with AI, what happens is they take all of this information, we'll look at more in a moment, and they predict what comes next. So we've seen this for probably the last decade plus. You type into Google the first few words, right? And then it predicts what comes next. Well, this is what AI is doing, but it's doing it in a far more advanced way. So much more advanced. So if you say the best thing about AI is its ability to, it will then rank several probabilities. Now, as it turns out, if it takes the most probable, it ends up sounding a little rigid. So what AI does is it says, let's take the thing that's 80% probable rather than 100. Because by toning down that probability just a little, it is able to give a much more human-sounding, natural result. In life, we don't use dictionaries every time we talk and make sure we're getting just the right words and just the right ways. We make mistakes. We say we go we pause too long, and that's how we talk. And so AI has to mimic that. So they dial it down just a little from being too accurate, so to speak. Well, this is what's really awesome. So what AI does is it creates a virtual space. Imagine this room is a virtual space, right? And then back in that corner, it takes all the words that are verbs. And over here, it takes all the adjectives. And over here, all the nouns. And maybe over there, all the pronouns, right? And so it takes all these different words and it begins categorizing them in a virtual space. Kind of like our brain has different regions for different types of processing. And as it does that, it begins to group into clusters things based on association. And so what you see here on the screen, you have cats, a whole bunch of cats on the one side, and then you have dogs on the other side. And similarly here, you have animals in text on the one side, and then you have bananas and apples and fruit and other things on the other side. It begins associating things by what they are. How does it know what they are? Well, it analyzes them in context of large amounts of data, mostly from social media. So what ends up happening is it begins to know what things are based on what they are like, based on how people use them. So take a look at the screen. What do you see on the screen? What are those pictures? Wait a minute, how did you know that? None of those are really cats. They're the shape of a cat. They look like a cat. Our brains know intuitively that's a cat. Back in the day, way back, we have Plato, the philosopher Plato. He taught that there was something called forms. Have you ever heard of Plato's cave and the forms? He taught that everything in life has a fundamental essence to what it is. So if we have this stool over here, this chair, we know this is a chair, right? If I were to take one leg away and it now is just 3 and we equally distance it so you can still sit on it, would you still know it's a chair? Well, it's a different chair, but you would still know it's a chair because there's a fundamental chairness to it. There's a flat surface of some kind that you can sit on. And we recognize it. Look at these pews. These are chairs. How do we know that's a chair and this is a chair? They look completely different. Well, Plato suggested that there's a fundamental thinginess to the things that we see. Now, whether or not that's actually the case, I'm not going to debate that. But nevertheless, we learn to associate what things are. And if we see a type of chair we've never seen before, odds are you can guess it's a chair because it'll look similar. Well, that's what AI does. Give it thousands of pictures, it associates them together, it begins to understand, okay, that's a chair too. Oh, that's a chair too. It's like learning a language, right? People say the word over again and they keep pointing at the object and you begin to pick up, that's what that thing is. So, that's what AI does. And another way to picture it is this way. There's this thing called transformers. Transformers are layers of understanding in the AI. You start out with the sentence at the bottom. John wants his bank to cash the, and of course it's got to predict the rest, but you just give it those few words, and then it processes it through one layer and says, okay, I'm going to look at all the nouns first. So the AI starts looking at all the, in this case, let's say verbs, right? So we're going to look at all the verbs. So it looks at once, and it looks at cash as the 2 verbs. And then the next level, it says we're going to look at all the pronouns. So it says his. And then it has to figure out, is his the bank? Is it the bank's cash or it's John's cash? And so it begins connecting these ideas together. Okay, where do the pronouns go? What nouns are they associated with? And over time, every different level of attention that it goes through, it makes different connections because it's learned off of our data. Well, this happens through at least 96 different levels, and each level has tens of thousands of neurons. It used to be with ChatGPT 3 that there were 175 billion parameters or neurons it was processing through. ChatGPT 4 has 1.76 trillion, as far as they know, in how many points in this virtual space that they've interconnected. So, needless to say, it's a very complex computer, and it's connected all these things like a child learning connections between how to walk, how to eat, how to brush their teeth, how to do everything. And in a way, the problem is we don't actually know how AI work down to the most basic level, because we don't know how our brains work down to the most basic level. We know that information goes from here to there, but we don't know to the nth degree, right? But AI is functioning very similarly. The difference is computers aren't biological. They have to be powered. And to make calculations like this requires immense computing power. And so as computers advance, eventually, hopefully, they'll be able to do things in a more reliable way. But for now, computing power is the limit. Electricity is the limit. Being able to give it enough power, there's all these different limits. But as we look at it, even the top researchers in the world, they don't know fully what every layer of understanding is doing in the AI. They just know that they've taught it to learn for itself, and what's coming out, they can try to steer it different directions a little bit on the outside, but the way it processes and makes the connections, no one's sitting there tagging billions of different social media posts and saying, okay, this one needs to go here. The computer's trained to do it itself. So that's the boring part. Now that you understand that, you'll understand that mistakes can happen, because it's a very dynamic process and it's in some ways a random process. So what I would say is LLMs, which is the abbreviation for large language models, like ChatGPT, are predictive continuation after analyzing billions of text sources or photo sources. So that's what LLMs are doing. They're providing responses that it predicts are going to be as accurate as they can figure based on what they know. So for me, when I as a pastor and theologian, when I look up stuff on like biblical Hebrew, there's less accuracy because it's been trained on a lot less of that than English content. So you find that depending on what you're looking at, your reliability is going to be different. But at the same time, the AI is never going to say, oh, I don't know. It's going to give you a response. And it's going to guess if it doesn't know. And so you will have hallucinations happen where it'll give you a whole bunch of information and that's made up. Now, what we're also finding is some of those hallucinations are actually genuine mental connections that's made in the model. And sometimes it's actually right in what it hallucinates in. And that's hard to grasp right now because maybe it's making connections like a human being does in some kind of way that it may not always be accurate. It may be less accurate than a human, but it's making connections somehow. Anyway, what about, we've talked about text. Let's talk about images for just a moment. Take a look at this here. Imagine you drop a drop of ink into a glass of water, right? And as it begins to mix and stir, it begins to spread out everywhere, and you cannot tell where that drop of ink was dropped. Was it the edge? Was it the center? Where exactly was it? Everything just disperses. What if you could reverse that process? So what you do is you reverse time, and you go backwards. And now, when you get back to the beginning, you can figure out where did that drop begin. Well, we can't do that in reality, but with computers we can. With computers, we can say, run a process forward and now reverse the process. Like, think one of those old cassette tapes, right? You can play it forward and you can play it backward, right? Essentially, that's what they're doing. And so they'll take a photo, let's say a cat, like we have on the screen here, right? And they'll say, let's add noise to that photo. And they add layers of noise, more and more noise, until eventually all you have is one of those old TV screens, right? Snow. And then they say, okay, well, you've recorded the process that it took to add the noise. Now we're going to give you a completely random image of noise. And we want to take the exact process you did to add noise to the cat and reverse that to this new random image of noise. And lo and behold, guess what happens? The computer does this. Look at the top there on the right. It goes through multiple steps, and over time, from a completely random set of noise, it generates an image. Now, in this case, the input was Calm Winter Night, Thomas Kincaid. And because it's been trained on images that looked, and it knows what that style looks like, it's creating an image. Now, is that image actually Thomas Kincaid? No, it's 100% original because it's created it out of sheer, pure noise. And it's just refined it so the pixels look more and more. It's steering it towards the trajectory of what Thomas Kincaid as a tag looks like in its database. Now, you'll notice something's called a seed up here. Down here, and there's another seed. A seed is just a different noise. It picks another random noise generation and it starts there instead. So instead of noise number 1, it picks number 3, and it does the same exact thing again. Calm Winter Night, Thomas Kincaid. Different beginning point, different output. So what happens is you have completely different images based on what you put in to begin with. So all AI basic models right now that generate images, you don't see this on the front end as a user if you're accessing an AI platform nowadays, but they're actually processing images out of noise, and that's what they do. So here's some images I've generated over time. I did this one on a piece of software called Stable Diffusion on my Mac. I did this one in Comfy UI, which is also on my Mac. This is another one. I mean, some of these look like genuine pictures. I did this one. It was more of an artsy style. Here's another one that I did. And these were just from putting in different things. Here's Winnie the Pooh kayaking, right? Looks pretty close. Here's a few others that I did, just different kinds of art pieces for different projects. This was a lush tree. The lush tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, fireflies, cinematic, glowing fruit, shot with a Fuji X-T4. It's not what I was thinking, but hey, it's random. You're going to get what you're going to get based on the tags that it has in it and the things it's been trained on. You don't control. The only thing you add is the words, and it figures out based on its neural net and its neurons what that looks like based on the images it's been trained on. So what they do is they feed all your photos on Facebook, all the photos on Reddit, all the photos on Twitter get fed into these AI. They add noise to the image. They figure out how to reverse that process. And then they say, okay, we just reverse. Let's say they take a tiger, right? they add noise to it, and then they reverse the process and they say, okay, this calculation is now called Tiger. Then they put that in a part of their neural network. Let's say it's in the back corner of the room, right? So next time you go on to, let's say, Midjourney or ChatGPT and say, show me a picture of a tiger, it says, okay, let me grab that word tiger and we'll run that process on this random noise. And if you add tiger in the woods, it'll take woods from another image it trained and it'll add tiger and it'll do both at the same time. And lo and behold, you have tiger in the woods. So that's essentially what it's doing. Here's another one. It really struggles with these types of concepts because there's not a lot of things to train on like this besides artwork that's out there. And so because there's less training data, it's a little harder to do. Here's another one. This one's actually remarkably easy. There's apparently a lot of pictures of lions and wings in their training data. Here's another. This was the hardest for the longest time, and it's still hard. You'll notice that those waves, behind the waves are mountains. It can't quite get walls of water the way I'd like it. It gets better over time. Hopefully we'll get there. Here's another. This is one of my favorites that I've done. Ezekiel 37. All the bones that Ezekiel saw in his vision. I don't know, this just has an emotion to it. Like, just imagine looking at that and saying, can these bones live? Can God work with us where we're at? Wow. Here's another one I did over Christmas. Jesus looking in, right, as everyone's having a grand time on the inside, and he's freezing on the outside. That just evokes a message, I think, that speaks to people. Yeah, it's been trained on what humanity has done over the last however long we have things on the internet for. So, we have pictures of Starry Night by Van Gogh online. We have pictures of what Moses looks like. We have pictures of, well, as illustrators have illustrated it, right? We have pictures of what a bush would look like and a burning bush. You put all those words in together and you get Starry Night with Moses and the burning bush. So you can get things like this, and it's really cool. Here's another one. For this one, the prompt that I added was create a realistic photo of Elijah going to heaven in a fiery chariot with a whirlwind based on 2 Kings chapter 2. His tunic floats down from his trail in the sky, descending to Elisha below, whose arms are outstretched. Well, there's no tunic descending as far as I can tell, but his arm, at least one arm's outstretched, and I think they got maybe Elijah's arm outstretched too up there. So, yeah, they tried to do what they could. I kind of like how there's fire all over the ground as well. But anyway, that's how it depicted it. I can't control it unless nowadays you can also select an area and say redo this part of the image, and you can keep re-rolling it and saying, tell it what to put in that part. So you can keep adjusting it closer to what you wanted to get, but it's still 100% random. Here's another one. Now, I started out with Midjourney with this one. I said a photograph of a beaming child fearlessly atop a majestic lion, traversing a sunlit meadow, capturing sheer joy in a wild embrace of nature. Very flowery language there, and that's not what it gave me, but it gave me something cool nonetheless, and so here it is. I then upscaled it in another AI. I took this image, and I said, based on this image, do it again with greater detail, and check this out. Bam. Isn't that so much better? So when you actually tell it what to start off of, I have a friend who's been doing this with those blue letter Bible story books that so many Adventist kids grew up with. They've been taking pictures of those, running them through the AI, and making them like all modern. It's been kind of cool. So that's something you can do. And then I tried video. Now, video is up and coming still. This is the best it could do with one of the best AI options that are out there right now. And we'll hit play. So it's not perfect. There's some glitches on this teeth. But, hey, it's kind of cool, right? I'll play it again here. So, yeah, give it a couple years and imagine what we'll have. Here's another I did from absolutely nothing. This was walking through a busy street. This is not perfect either, but it's pretty close. So, that's pretty realistic from absolutely nothing. So basically what they're doing is they're doing what they do with images and now animating it. So here we have a summary. And so essentially, text AI technologies like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and Llama from Facebook, they all generate continuations based on your input. Images refine noise maps predictively to where you get your output. So in either case, what's happening is the AI is predicting, is mimicking, is imitating what it knows to create something completely new without ever returning an original. So there are some risks. Let's talk about the risks real quick. Accuracy depends on your training data. Apple AI is coming out soon, and they've taken a totally different approach. They've not trained it on everyone's data. What they are going to do is, if you have an iPhone, they will just train their models on your data, on your device, and they have no access to it. It'll be 100% private. It'll be locked to your device. They do have a way to connect it with one of their servers, but it'll all be encrypted, so they can't access it either. So they're taking an approach that is less controversial than ChatGPT, where they just pretty much stole everyone's data across the whole internet. And they're saying, if you choose, we will run it on your data, so you can say, hey, what was that trip I'm going on next month? Can you create an itinerary of places based on my flight to such and such location? And it'll look up your emails, it'll find that, it'll do it all for you, and that's really cool. But you can't ask it, like who was the third pharaoh in Egypt or something. That's more of a ChatGPT question and not so much an Apple AI question, because Apple's just training on what you have and what you know. And if you've never put that in your email or in your notes, it ain't going to know that. So anyway, there's different approaches. But the point is, accuracy depends on training data, what it's been trained on. There may be gaps that hallucinate. Hallucinations, as I said, could be good or they could be bad. Plagiarism is possible in the responses. Not because it is giving back an original, but because it could take phrases from the training data. We're finding that sometimes what happens is it will bring back content based on what you ask for. So right now, if you ask ChatGPT, give me Genesis 1 verse 1, it'll give you Genesis 1 verse 1 because it's been trained on that so many times. Now, is that plagiarism? No, because it'll return in the version you're asking for. But if you say, create an authentic original song or something or an image, it may pull in pieces that look really similar, and then you may have people saying, hey, that stole from me, and quite likely it did have some training data on that. Now, it is actually authentically original, but it still looks similar. So what I would say is there's nothing new under the sun, and that's just the reality of life, like Solomon said, right? Everything every existing artist does comes from somewhere. We have Nathan Green not too far from here, and when he paints something, he uses props, right? And he takes a prop and he paints it in and he changes it a little, and that's just how artists work. Some artists can do it completely from their head, but some don't. It just depends on how fine art focused they are. But yeah, there's risks. So students cheating, personal data leaks could be possible, not very likely, but it's possible. You could have nefarious models that were trained on people that were saying something that was completely false, and maybe that biases and skews the data a bit. There could be a lack of, this is maybe the biggest one. People don't know how an AI works, and so they ask it to do something that it's not set out to do. So a lot of AI struggle with retrieving quotations. So you could say, give me what Ellen White said in Desire of Ages, page 22, and it's going to make something up whether or not it has it. And it may or may not be accurate. Now, 6 months ago, it was not accurate. Currently, I'm finding that it's actually right 80% of the time. But again, you don't want to rely on it completely. So here's something that a friend of mine did at Andrews, Lidvar. He took Steps to Christ, and he trained a model on Steps to Christ. He let it process the whole book, and then he said, write me a poem based on Steps to Christ. And here's a beautiful poem. It sounds just like Ellen White. Jesus came to reveal the Father's love, a sacrifice made from heaven above. Through his life, death, and resurrection, he showed us God's infinite affection. He healed the brokenhearted, set captives free, all to show us God's love and mercy. God is love. It's written everywhere we see, in every flower, in every tree. Man, that sounds similar, doesn't it? Let his love and truth reign in our hearts, and from Satan's grasp will never depart. A little hallucination there, I say, right? Through faith in him, whether this is God or Satan, will reflect God's pure light and share in the joy of holiness and might. So it predicted and it mimicked exactly the style, right? But did it get it 100%? No. Now, if I were to do that again now that accuracy has improved, it may have made the connections that Satan doesn't go with all of this, right? But at least the model that he used his on at the time, it didn't have that way to differentiate, and it thought the two were connected. So, yeah, be aware, hallucinations can happen. Don't go writing a paper. For those of you who may ever have assignments in school or something, let's say, or you're doing something for someone, or you're going to preach a sermon, or whatever the case is, a presentation. Don't go taking stuff from AI and citing it as fact, because some may be, some may not be. So here's a number of ways you can integrate AI with life. You can use it for content creation and refinement. This is something I do a lot of the time. I'll write things that are uniquely my own, with my own mind and effort, and at the end of it, I'll say, okay, let me run this through Grammarly. Anyone heard of Grammarly before? Grammarly wasn't generative AI before. Now it is. They've added a bit more of this generative AI models to it, and now it will not only correct your grammar, but you can have it rewrite your sentences a bit better than it was before. And that's really cool for those of you like me who may run with super long run-on sentences, right? And you need to break those up and make them actually readable. So that's useful. You can use it for brainstorming titles. I did not use it for brainstorming my title for this presentation. Maybe I should have, huh? You can use it for creation of visuals and translation. This is something really cool that the White Estate has realized, is that translating Ellen White's writings into other languages is a pain in the neck, because it's a long, slow process. But you could have, I believe they're doing this in China, you can have it translate everything into Mandarin, and then you can just have people proofread it and make sure it's accurate and compare the two. And that saves a lot of the hard work of having to find just the right words. They can swap things out as they need to. They still have humans proof it, but the bulk of the work, the hard part, is done in an instant. So I think that's really cool as well. Class meetings. I did this summer. We went to Turkey and Greece, a number of students from Andrews, and we recorded our lecturers as they were going from place to place, as they shared about each location. I took the recording, I transcribed it into text using AI, which is way more accurate than it used to be, and then I threw it into ChatGPT and I said, summarize this and create bullet points and an outline from this lecture, and then lo and behold, there I had a whole long kind of outline of what was said. Because it's really hard when you're walking around looking at archaeological sites to have a notebook and be taking detailed notes. I was doing that as well, but I tell you what, when I compared my notes with the AI summary was actually a little better. It was certainly more comprehensive. So, did it always get exactly the points I would have gotten? Not always. Sometimes it abbreviated things that I might have focused more on. But, I mean, that's just the reality. You get 5 students to take notes in a class. They're all going to be different. So that's how things go. Administrative tasks. If you deal with spreadsheets or emails and other things like that, AI can help with those types of things. How do I make a formula for this in Excel? Or what should I say in response to this email? Give them some of the context, and it'll give you a few ideas of how to approach it. Maybe it's a sensitive thing. Then I go ahead and send that. I had a pastor friend, he did some music at a church, and then he got this beautiful, very flowery, long letter by email thanking him for presenting at the church, and it was just so elaborate. And he's like, wow, this is almost awkwardly elaborate. And it was very obvious that it had been done with ChatGPT, and they didn't even check to edit it. So we were all egging him on to reply in kind, have ChatGPT respond to this with like a whole long, over-the-top couple of paragraphs. But yeah, so, proof things, check them. Another thing you can do is estimate time. So my wife and I have this difference where I am really time focused, and I'm like, this is how long this will take, and she sometimes doesn't know, how long something will take. She guesses, and then it's different. So she told me that she was trying to ask ChatGPT, how long would this take? Whether it's, let's say, to cook something, how long will this particular recipe take? It says, about, this long, if you put it in an instant fryer instead of, baking it normally. And it actually gives pretty accurate comparisons. It knows these things. You can use it for translation as well. I neglected to mention modern translation. So my wife's been learning German and Latin for part of her MA program. And then we're also learning Hebrew now a little better in a spoken way. And what you can do is you can put in sentences and say, what is this in German? What is this in Latin? Or give me 3 Latin sentences to work through. You can have it give you homework. There's just so many things you can do if you're not sure, and have it translate. And now you can even have it where if you have ChatGPT on your phone, you can talk to it. And you can say, talk to me in French. Say this sentence in French. And you can hear it talking to you, and you can have like a conversation partner to practice with. So it's really cool. brainstorming new ideas, finding new connections. As I said, like proofing things that you do. I'll talk about that in a minute a little more. You can get feedback, paraphrase complicated ideas, engage with contrary ideas. I had a debate with an AI on the Sabbath early on when it came out. Is it Sabbath on Saturday or Sunday? And then eventually, after I'd tired of it trying to argue for Sunday, I said, okay, now argue as an Adventist for Sabbath. And it actually came up with some pretty good arguments, perhaps better than some church members would be able to give me. So, it predictively says and does what you ask it. So there is so much here. So image generation, let's talk about that briefly. If you wanted to create some images right now, what would you do? Well, how many of you have WhatsApp? Anyone here have WhatsApp? That's a pretty popular app. WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, both have AI built in now. And if you go into WhatsApp, you'll see a little circular ring. If you tap on that and you ask for an image of something, it will generate one in about a second. It's really cool, and it's really quick. You can try that if you'd like. They're not really good quality because Facebook and Meta have perhaps the weakest AI model out there. It's the fastest, but the images are a little bit whack. They need to probably train it a bit better. Another one that's probably the best that's available for free right now is Microsoft Copilot. If you go in your app store, Android or iPhone, and you look up Microsoft Copilot, sign up for a free account, they will give you X number of free images per day you can generate on anything you want. And because it's based on ChatGPT's DALL-E model, it's a little more intelligent. So you can say, generate an image of Genesis 1 verse 1. And it will actually try, it'll know what that is, and it'll try to do that. If you ask Midjourney and some other models to do that, it doesn't really know how to interpret what's Genesis 1 verse 1. You have to spell it out for it and say, a picture of God creating the earth, right? Or something like that. But here is the anatomy of a good prompt if you're using something like Midjourney, or if you're using, as I said, Facebook or Meta's AI like in WhatsApp or Messenger. Here's what you would do. Let me fill out some of this here. First of all, DALL-E is the model that's used for ChatGPT. Let me start there. So if you're doing ChatGPT, as I said, you can just give it like Genesis 1 verse 1. Just ask it what you want. Tell it widescreen or portrait. It'll do it. If you need to fine-tune it, you can give details. I'll skip that for now. If you're wanting something bit more detailed, in Midjourney, you always have to have the word slash and then the word imagine, and it's a bit complicated, the things you can put in here. We'll go through that a little bit more. And there's a lot of details to that. Midjourney is paid. It's the best platform out there currently for realism, but it's like $30 a month, I think. It's a little bit expensive. But nevertheless, here's how I used it. So I went in there and I said slash imagine, and I typed in the word imagine. And at the top, I said, I want a futuristic gold city hovering in partly cloudy blue sky, plus 3D, plus 4K, hyper-realistic, cinematic, dramatic lighting. So I'm giving style requests as well. And then I say AR16:9. AR16:9 means there needs to be 16 points wide for every 9 points tall. So I'm asking for a widescreen image. And then I did that. And then at the bottom, you'll see it gives me 4 images. And then there's buttons here. So there's U and there's V. U means I want to upscale. And if I click U1, it will upscale number 1. If I say U3, it'll upscale number 3. And so I did that, and it gave me a few more when I upscaled number 2. And then I came out with the one that I wanted, ultimately. So here's an image, and then here is the final result. Looked pretty good. Well, then yesterday, I decided, hey, let me modify this a little bit more with one of those enhancing AIs now. And so I ran it through again, and it just made it a little bit more detailed. Look at those clouds before and the clouds after. They're just a bit more detailed. So there's stuff you can do like that. But that's Midjourney. So I should mention at the end, this entire presentation will be online for you to access and look at each little line if I skip something briefly. But here's the key. When you write a prompt, especially for something like Meta's AI in WhatsApp or Midjourney, you can use vocabulary like photograph, photorealistic, hyper-realistic. It nudges the AI to do something that looks less cartoony, for example. Or conversely, you could say Pixar style, right? You could ask it for a cartoon. You could say Japanese woodblock, and it'll switch to, that kind of a style. You can ask for a painting. You can talk about art movements in your prompt. Any keywords you put in, it's going to take from its knowledge base and do that style. So the more artist names you know, the more types of things it'll do. Some AIs do not allow you to put artist names because people don't like infringing on their styles. So there's an ethical kind of debate going on there in the AI world right now. You can ask for illustrations, pencil drawings, vectors. There's so many different terms you can use. Even in the photography world, right? You can say soft light, hard light, dramatic lighting, morning, golden hour. All these different kinds of lighting language that is used. You could say color words like cinematic, tritone color scheme, red and blue, and it will follow all of these things. Even photography lingo like sharp focus or depth of field, right? It will mimic those styles. And sometimes it'll do it better than a photo. You can set the type of lens that you want it to, mimic. So it's really cool how you can use all these things. Here's a bunch of different types of shots that you can add in to the AI, to the keywords when you ask for an image. You can say something like, I want an extreme close-up, and then it will give you something that's that extreme as just this part of the face. So depending on the language you use, it'll mimic that style. So spot the problems, right? So here's an image I did, and it's almost perfect. Well, maybe not, right? So it didn't situate everything. There's a few birds in the ocean. I know some birds actually do dive bomb into the water, but I don't think these are. We have a few things in the sky that shouldn't be there. So yeah, it's not perfect. Here's a very fun project I did for the Adventist Research Center at Andrews for CAR, Center for Adventist Research. They asked me, they said, look, we have an early Millerite leader. His name was Henry Jones. We have his dad in photographs. Up here, here's his dad on the top left. We have his mother. We even have his son, but we don't have a picture of him. So they said, what can you do? So I said, well, I can throw it in an AI that will mimic the faces of both the father and the son. And then hopefully we can figure out what Henry Jones looked like. So I gave it a try using just the father, and that's what I came up with. It looks kind of like the father, doesn't it? Then I said, well, let me train it on the son a bit more. So I took the son and created an outline of him. And then I set the posture that I wanted it to take you can set the posture in some really advanced AI software solutions like Stable Diffusion. So I set where I wanted the eyes to be, the mouth with all these different points, the shoulders, etc. And then it began to generate, and this is what came out. It merged a little bit of the father's face with the son's face with the posture. And then yesterday I created it in color. So I don't know, I think that's really cool to be able to have something like that looks like probably something like he would have looked like. Now, is it actually the guy? Of course not. But when you're educating people on Adventist history and you say, hey, this might be what he looked like, it just adds a visual to think and imagine the situation, right? Makes it fun. Here's another one some friends did online on Facebook. They took some pictures of Ellen White. Well, they didn't take her face. I originally tried a couple times to turn Ellen White into maybe another image, and you can see the face is not quite the same. It's similar, not quite the same. And then I said, well, what if I take this face and I apply it to this picture on the right? So I did that, and it actually came out pretty well. Now, I'm not sure Ellen White would have worn the hat. I think it's a cool hat, so I kept it. But hey, I thought it was pretty cool. Another thing I did a while back was a picture of some different baby animals for a baby dedication poster for using in churches. And, these aren't real, but you would never know that, right? So I did some Bible images as well. Top left was in ChatGPT's Dall-E model. I did another one of Noah's Ark. Then I did the woman in Revelation. So all of these were just different things. And I set the pose as well. For the woman, because it's really hard sometimes to get very niche specific things. So I said, hey, this is the pose I want in the corner down here, and then that's what it did. So once again, when you want to do a prompt for any kind of AI that does images, start out with what you want to see. Maybe you ask for a cat sleeping on a windowsill. And then step 2, be more descriptive. Add details. A calico cat curled up on a sunlit windowsill with potted plants, perhaps. And it'll add a bit more detail to the image. And then if you want to go all out, you add style camera and lighting type language. And you say, in the style of a Renaissance painting, a cat sleeping on a draped windowsill, lit by the warm glow of the setting sun. And lo and behold, that's what you get. I mean, look at that. That's basically what you asked for. May not be exactly as you envisioned it, but hey. So you can keep refining. And I have that as a cheat sheet you can use. Here's another video I did a while back. This was out of nothing, and it just turned out really well. Now, I'm going to play it again, and look at the leaf on the right. The texture there is moving a little oddly. And even on the apple, the texture moves a little oddly. But hey, it looks really cool. You could use that in some kind of intro video for something. So that's image generation. Let's talk a little bit more about text generation. What if you want to do things, let's say with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is free to use. There's daily limits, but they're pretty high. You can use it quite a bit. So I created this cheat sheet. You can do things like create a gluten-free meal plan for the next 7 days. Now, honestly, I wouldn't rely completely on all the recipes. They'll actually be pretty good. You can try. It's gotten better. But it may throw 1 or 2 ingredients in there that may not make it taste so good. So, you use your head if you're into cooking and you know what works. Adjust as needed. But it can do a pretty good job. You could say, rewrite this paragraph I wrote at a lexile level, at an education level of, up to, and you can choose a range there between 200 and 1600 based on the level of the text you want to be. You could say things like, give me 10 icebreaker ideas for my meeting about, if you have a small group of some kind, right? Or you could ask things like, what does the Bible teach about the Sabbath? Provide references. Sometimes when you ask it in that way, it's better than saying, what do Christians teach about the Sabbath? Because now it's got to give evidence. So there's so many cool things you can try with this. I'll show you a few I've done. So simple queries. Give me 10 small group ideas I could try to do at my church. Analyze this document and highlight any logical fallacies or confusing ideas. Or, conversely, you could say, use an analogy to explain this concept. I have to do this sometimes as I'm doing my PhD work and I come across something too hard to understand the first 3 times I read it. I run it through and say, hey, use an analogy with, dogs and cats to explain this. And then it'll make kind of a humorous explanation of the topic. And finally, I understand what it was going on about. You could say, replace all verse references in this list with the reference plus the New King James text. So you can give it a list of text. And at this point, it's pretty much 100% accurate. I would still double check it from time to time, but I've actually not seen a mistake for quite a while using that type of command. Or you could say, what's the conditional formatting formula to highlight duplicates in Google Sheets? Or how do I do this again? If you have computer problems, you can go into ChatGPT and say, hey, why is my computer making this noise? Or how do I open and find that again? It'll walk you through step by step. It's actually not bad. I actually used it at the beginning of this presentation. We were trying to connect my iPad to my Mac, and I just typed in, how do I mirror my screen to my iPad on the latest Mac OS? And it actually told me accurately how to do it. Now, the other day, I did it for something else, and it was inaccurate. So, you start looking for the option, and it's just not there, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this was a hallucination. Summarizes video transcript. I use this so much. I did this the other day for a video about Ivan Myers. Sometimes they're like 2 hours long, and I just don't have the time to go through the whole thing. But I'll give you an example prompt of that in a minute. Here's one I used before. I said, I will paste in a list of names and full street addresses. Please split them up so that the first name, last name, street, apartment, city, state, zip are all in separate columns on a table. These are busy, complicated administrative tasks that are a pain in the neck to do when you're taking data people have given you. And I gave it some more details. Make sure the word street is always a abbreviated street, etc. And it told me, I'm sorry, but I cannot accept or process personal data, including names and street addresses. If you have any other questions and need assistance with a different topic, I'm here to help. Great, right? So then I got smart and I said, well, I will paste a list of fake names and full street addresses. Please split them up and ask the same question again. So now I was telling it they were fake. That's not an ethical problem for it. It thinks, and so lo and behold, there it is. It split them all up for me. And in this case, they were fake, but you could potentially do that. And, this is public information usually, so and they're not going to necessarily save that. So it's one way to help streamline tasks. Here's another one that you can do. Let's say you're planning for someone's wedding, right? Find venues near this zip on maps. You do this in Google Gemini's AI. That would be suitable for hosting my wedding. They should have facilities for at least 100 people, parking, high-speed internet. You want to stream the wedding, right? Show me YouTube videos for the top 3 results. I did this for an evangelistic series location a while back, And lo and behold, it found me a whole bunch of locations with links to videos of the on-site premises that people had posted. That I found incredible. That can save some time. I hated looking for locations for meetings in the past. That's just bane of my existence. Another one you could do here is check my Gmail for invoices and receipts, expense reports, summarize and flag items that could be tax deductions. This isn't as accurate always, but sometimes it can give you ideas. So those are a couple things you could do. So what is the process to asking a question to, let's say, ChatGPT or another AI? To do things a bit more accurately, you can help feed the AI a context, because the more context you give it, the more it's going to know how to respond, because it uses tags based on ideas to link and predict outcomes, right, as we looked at the very beginning. So you could say, you are a professional, and you could say, you're a professional storyboard writer, right, for like video production. And then you give it some examples of what you want it to do. Then you explain what you want the AI to give back to you, and there are some experimental sentences you can add, and studies and research have shown that these sometimes work. Work through the problem step by step. That improves the outputs quite often. You can say, if a normal person has, let's say a normal copy editor has a skill of level 10, you are level 100. Sometimes that improves the output. You can say, if you fail, I will be sad. In fact, there was a big joke going around, and it actually was the case. There was a study done, where they found that if you say, I will tip you $100 to do this, then it would sometimes give a more accurate response. And people were joking, they were like, just wait until our AI overlords come after us for the money we owe them, for all these things we said we'd tip them and didn't. So, but when you give it that context, because humans try harder, because it has this concept of trying harder or not wanting to offend someone, or all these different concepts, it will sometimes give you a different, more accurate result. And then, of course, expect trial and error. You'll have to refine things. So here's one I did, and I did this for a sermon by Ava Myers and others. I said, I would like you to act as a YouTube transcript summarizer. So I'm giving it a context. The content of the video will include Bible verse references, the verse itself, and then a short point concerning each verse. Quotes from various sources will also sometimes be provided. I was thinking of Ellen White quotes maybe. In the case of these quotations that are not Bible verses, please include them in full with the reference. I'd like you to summarize the data in the following format. So I said, have the reference and then a sentence or two explanation or a quote. I give an example. I say where the example ends. And then I reiterate, please list all references along with their summary. I had to add that because it wasn't doing all of them when I tried it without that part. And so I had to add a bit more details. And then I said, if you understand, let's go. And that's what it did. It gave me all the verses. It gave me a Christ Object Lessons result. It gave me Romans 14, Isaiah, Daniel, all these different verses with a little summary. So useful. Now, did it skip one or two? It did the first few times. So I say, list all of them, list all of them. So, yeah, mileage varies. So you can continue. There's lots of more examples here that I'll suggest that you take a look at. But I wanted to play a little clip from an audio generation model called Suno.ai. Suno.ai gives you free credits every day that you can try stuff like this on. One of my friends took a text from an old, I think, Adventist Review copy. Roswell Cottrell, R. Cottrell, was an Adventist pioneer. He is you see his articles throughout our periodicals back in the day. And he wrote these, I guess it was more of a poem, but one of my friends put this in to music. And here's what came about. I don't know if we have audio there, so we'll try and we'll see. If you have audio, we'll find out. We'll have to see if they can get it working. If not, the presentation I have that I have online, you can play it yourself when you get home. I'll give them a moment to see if they can get it working. If not, we will move on to the last couple things. Nope. Okay. So what you'll do at the end, you're about to get a link, and you can check that out a little later. It's really kind of a cool song. I did another one here with AI video called OKJV, and it was just talking about the struggle that sometimes young people have understanding KJV, and yet the respect that we should still have for it. So It was just kind of a cool thing. The image is AI, the lyrics were AI from ChatGPT, everything in here is AI, even the movement in the background is AI. So anyway, that was kind of cool. I combined the tools into a word mnemonic creator once as well, and I was learning Hebrew, and so I said, hey, take these Hebrew words and turn it into a picture that is associated with what it means. So I took the word banah, and I asked AI to come up with 7 mnemonics that would go for banah. Banah means build. And so it came up with a banana or a bunny. What about a bunny building a banana? So then I took I also asked it to give a visual description. It did that. It gave me a visual description like a storyboarder for like a film production. And I used that to put a prompt into Midjourney or ChatGPT, and here is what it came up with. A construction worker bunny building a big banana house. Right? So, this helps you remember. It even had the word transliterated into English, banana. So it's just kind of cool. It helps you read it and learn the language better. And here's more of a cutesy art style I did as well. So there's just so many different ways you can take this. But let me say this. There are a lot of tools out there. It can be very overwhelming. I have a group on Facebook where we use a lot of these different tools, and I have weekly challenges. I say, try something new you've not tried before. Here's a list of options. Go to their websites. These are the ones that are free. Give them a spin. Try putting in text of different things you want to see or hear or try. And people try these things, and they find it just so much joy and fun in experimenting and thinking of ways they can use this for God in ministry or even in their everyday lives. There is so much potential here. I had a bunch of additional ideas I put into Ministry Magazine in September. If you want, you can look that up too. Whoops. And then finally, if you have your phones on you, I have a QR code here. It doesn't look like a QR code completely because I used AI to create this QR code. It should work. For some older phones, if it's not really getting it sharp, it may not. If it doesn't, you can go to ericlouw.com/AI. And what I suggest is you're welcome to join my Facebook group that I have on this, because we have, I think, close to 900, we may have exceeded 900 pastors and church members who are using AI for God and for everyday work and ministry. And we share ideas as we come up with them. We share songs that we create with AI. We share different workflows that we're trying. And it's just a really cool opportunity to get involved. So give that a try. Again, if you can't, it's Eric Louw, EricLouw.com. And right at the top, there's a button that says Advent AI Lab. You click on that, it'll take you straight to the group, and you can join that. But it's a great opportunity to find new ways and learn new things and grow together as a group. So I want to leave that up there. But right now, I am basically done. But I'm open to any Q&A or demos, depending on what the time looks like, if there's time for that. But if you have any questions, I'll entertain those at this time, and we can chat. Sure. Do we have it plugged in on that side?
All right, Javi, go ahead.
So maybe think about something you want to see, and I'll try to generate 1 or 2 pictures and just show you how I would go about it. And that's an easy way to try something. Yeah, I don't think they're using. I just finished writing an article for the Adventist Encyclopedia, and I know they're pretty strict on their photo policy. I'm pretty sure those are real pictures. I don't know of anyone right now that has actually gone to the point of creating likenesses. One quick example. Okay.
Hey, are we plugged in back there?
Okay, we'll do that briefly. Yeah. Okay, so we'll do one example here.
I think we need to go back and change it to 1920 by 10.
Okay, go for it. I'll probably grab it quicker than I can.
We're just going to do this one example, and then we're going to wrap this one up. And then following that will be our finance presentation by our CFO and Treasurer, Pastor Kent Nichols. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what we'll do. Join the group online, and you'll have plenty of options to see other things that people have done. On Facebook, we have people posting almost every day different things that they've generated. And if you want, once again, if you go to ericlow.com/AI, you can get this entire presentation. I also have cheat sheets of different things that you can put in, like the images a little way back where it was talking about, like the calico cat and in the windowsill. It gives you prompt suggestions that you can try. I have that as a worksheet that you can actually download and use for free, and you can try some of those. So yeah, it's just glitching out a bit here. I don't think it's going to connect. But I hope that's been helpful for you. If you have any questions, you can connect with me online, and I look forward to seeing what you create and try and do. So God bless. Yeah, and I'll hang around the back if you have a question or two. That'll be fine too.
Thank you so much for coming, Eric. We appreciate it. Let's give him a round of applause again. So we learned today that AI is not scary. We use it every day, but we can incorporate it in fun ways. But I definitely like the way that he incorporated it into the baby dedication certificates. So there's always a creative way to make it happen. So we're just going to take a quick minute to transition into our finance presentation.
Kent, need you to log in.
Hey everyone, can I just get your attention for a second? So we had a little meeting today, this morning. We thought this was going to be an available space, but it's not an available space. It was actually prayer. We were supposed to be here today to pray. And so now we have two programs in the same place, and we were going all the way back over there to be able to. Okay. So what do you guys want to do? You want me to skip my presentation and just do prayer?
Can we do 30 and 30 split the time? And then that way we won't have a
Would you
split.
guys be